Have you noticed something strange about how we talk about people's lives? Millions of people are working hard every day, trying, failing, then trying again, carrying responsibilities, carrying pressure, but we don't really tell their stories. Then one day, someone becomes successful, and suddenly everyone wants to know their past. How many years did you struggle? How many failures did you face? How difficult was your journey? These are the kind of questions we ask to the successful people. The same efforts existed yesterday as well. The same uncertainty was there. The same pain was there yesterday as well. But yesterday, it was totally invisible. And today, it becomes inspirational. And it makes you wonder, do we really care about the struggle? Or do we care about the struggle only after it turns into something else? Only after it turns into success story? And what about the people whose efforts never become a headline? Whose lives never become a success story? Whose work remains quiet, ordinary, unresolved? We rarely talk about them. Keep that discomfort with you. Because our epics, and especially the way we remember them, quietly expose something very deep about how we think. Think about Prabhu Sri Ram's life, a prince who could have lived in comfort but accepts exile, lives in the forest for 14 years, loses his wife, fights a great war, defeats Ravan, returns, and becomes king. When we hear this story, it feels complete. There is a shape to it that our mind immediately understands: sacrifice, endurance, victory. We don't just admire Ram's character, we admire his journey. In fact, imagine Ram without the exile, without the forest life, without the loss, without the war. Would his story feel the same? Probably not. A big part of why his return feels earned, why his crown feels deserved, why his life feels meaningful is because we have seen what he went through. His suffering is visible, his trial is dramatic, his pain has a clear direction. It leads somewhere. Ram's life fit a story pattern we are emotionally trained to respect. Pain that turns into purpose, loss that turns into restoration, and struggle that turns into a reward. It's not just a great story, it's a comforting story. Now think about Sri Krishna. We usually remember the playful child, the fluid, the smile, the charm, the brilliant strategist, the divine guide. But let's slow down and look at his life. He is born in a prison, taken away from his parents the moment he is born, grows up knowing someone wants him dead, lives under constant threat, gets pulled into politics, violence, and power struggles very early. Later, he becomes the one who has to guide an entire civilization through a devastating war, not as a king, not as a warrior, but as the one who carries the moral weight of impossible decisions. He has to convince people to fight, he has to watch people die, carry the burden of choices where every option is wrong in some way. And in the end, what happens? He watches his own people destroy each other. He leaves the world quietly, alone, away from celebration, away from victory. This is not a light life, this is not an easy life. But here is the strange thing: we don't usually feel Krishna's story as a tragic one. We don't usually tell his story as a burdened one. We talk about his brilliance, his charm, his divinity, his intelligence, but we don't talk about how heavy his role was, not about how lonely his position was, and not about how endless his responsibilities was. Why? Because his suffering is not cinematic in the way we expect. Sri Ram's pain is external: exile, war, separation, loss, while Sri Krishna's pain is internal: responsibility, moral conflict, psychological weight, isolation. Ram's story moves toward a resolution. Krishna's story doesn't really. There is no neat suffer, win, and rest kind of ending. So we remember Krishna differently. Not because his life was easier, but because his suffering doesn't fit the story shape we are quite comfortable with. Now ask yourself, why do we as humans love struggle stories that end in a success so much? It's not just because they are dramatic, it's not just because they are well structured, it's because they do something very personal for us. When someone else's pain turns into victory, it gives us a quiet hope. Maybe my pain will also make sense one day. Maybe this phase is not the end of my story. Maybe the struggle is going somewhere. In a strange way, other people's success stories become our emotional loans that we take for our own lives. They promise us, hold on, keep going, this might be worth it. And that's comforting. There is also something very deep here. We like to believe the world is fair, that effort is rewarded in the end, the sacrifice means something, the suffering is not random. Psychologists call this as the just world idea. Struggle success stories become protecting that belief. They tell us the world makes sense, things balance out, pain gets compensated. But stories that don't resolve neatly, stories where someone carries a burden and never gets a crown, they threaten that comfort. They suggest that maybe effort doesn't always get rewarded. Maybe some pain just remains pain. Maybe the world is not always neat or fair. That makes us uncomfortable. So we quietly turn away from those stories. Or we just simplify them. We retain them in a nicer shape. There is another bias working here as well. We mostly hear stories from people who survived and succeeded. We don't hear from the millions who struggled every single day just as hard and didn't make it. This is called survivorship bias. So our minds learn a wrong lesson, a lesson that struggle usually leads to success. Not because it always does, but because we only hear from the one who did. The slowly, without realizing, we start expecting every story to end that way. Now bring this back to the real life. A person struggles for years and nobody notices. The same person becomes successful and suddenly their past becomes inspiring. A teacher works quietly for decades. A caregiver sacrifices their own dreams. A parent carries responsibility without rest. But there is no trophy, no headline, no viral story. So we don't frame these lives as great journeys. Not because they lack effort, but because society hasn't given us permission to celebrate them. In a way, we don't decide whose struggle matters. The fame does, the status does, and the visibility does. And there is another very uncomfortable truth here. Struggle stories are not just about inspiration, they are also about the legitimacy. People often feel the need to say, I suffered, therefore I deserve this. And the audiences often demand, show me your pain, then I will respect your success. So suffering becomes a kind of currency, a proof, a certificate, a moral receipt. Now, let's finally name the pattern. Look at how we treat stories. We don't fully respect struggle by itself. We start respecting it after it produces success. And we don't fully respect success unless we can see the pain behind it. Struggle becomes a justification for achievement, and achievement becomes a validation for the struggle. They start depending on each other for meaning. And everyone who doesn't fit this loop they fade into the background. Most real lives are not like Sri Ram. They don't have clean arcs, they don't have grand returns, they don't have dramatic closures. Most real lives are closer to that of Sri Krishna's, full of responsibility, full of complexity, full of quiet internal battles, and often without any applause from anyone. So maybe the shift we need is this: to learn to respect efforts even when it doesn't become famous, to learn to see weight even when it doesn't become poetic, to learn to value lives even when they don't become success stories. Because some of the hardest work in the world happens without any witness. Some of the deepest sacrifices never get a headline. Some of the bravest lives never get a happy ending arc. Sri Ram shows us the kind of struggle the world easily understands, while Sri Krishna shows us the kind of struggle that world often misses. And life quietly reminds us not every battle ends with a crown. Not but that doesn't make the battle any less real. Maybe it's time we learn to respect these stories as well. If you like this video, if you like the concept of struggle and success and connect their connection with lives of Sri Ram and Sri Krishna, please like this video, share it with your friends, and do subscribe to our channel. Also follow us on Instagram. The handle is indian.penpulse. Thank you very much for watching. See you in another video. Bye bye.